So before we get started, I just have to show off my starry bracelet. There it is. Can you see? Um, my friend, the amazing nonfiction writer Barb Rosenstock, sent it to me in celebration of the rise and fall of Charles Lindbergh's six-starred reviews. 6 stars. And a friend like Barb Rosenstock. I really am blessed. Now I'm going to get down to business. Some people have asked, why? Why write a book about Charles Lindbergh? Hasn't he gotten more than his due over the years? My answer? Indeed, he has. And that's why I wrote the book. It's time, I think, for a reconsideration. In these days, as we strive to bring diversity to our historical narratives, I think we should also re-examine those individuals who received the lion's share of that narrative space. Did Lindbergh deserve his exalted place? Does he still? Back in 1925, when he was called Lucky Lindy, and the world fell in love with him, he was an idol, a pure boy pilot, a red, white, and blue hero. And then he got blown off course. It happened in the spring of 1932, when his 22-month-old son was kidnapped. That event broke Charles beyond repair. But can it be seen as the explanation for all he did afterward? Does it explain the macabre experiments that he performed in a secret laboratory at the Rockefeller Institute of Medicine alongside his mentor, Nobel Prize-winning Dr. Alexis Carrel? It's true. Lindbergh was searching for the cure to death. He hoped to make man immortal, at least some men. A higher council of learning is what he and Carrel called it. Living uninterrupted for centuries, these men, and they were only men, white men, would teach the rest of the world how to live. They would be the salvation of the white race by creating the perfect social order. Of course, this group of superior humans would include Lindbergh, and it would include Dr. Carrel, too. How do we know this creepy stuff? Primary sources. Charles writes about it about his search for immortality in great deal, again, in his autobiography of values. Dr. Carrel published his poisonous eugenics beliefs in his book, Man the Unknown, which was a bestseller at the time, and the Saturday Review and the New York Times wrote in depth about their experiments. Is it any wonder, then, that Lindbergh found Nazi Germany a convivial place? After a visit to that country in the summer of 1936, he pronounced Hitler an undoubtedly great man who has done much for Germany. And, Lindbergh added, he was the only hope. Hitler was the only hope for restoring a moral world. So besotted was Lindbergh with Germany that after his second visit, he decided to move his family to Berlin. The only thing that stopped him? Kristallnacht, which erupted just weeks before he planned to move his family there. Even then, Lindbergh gave Germany a pass for their violence against the German people. The Germans, he said, have undoubtedly had a difficult Jewish problem. Again, how do we know? Lindbergh's wartime journals sheds light on his opinions regarding the Jews. We have a lot of tabs on that too. So do the letters that he and Anne wrote home to family and friends about Germany. Anne too detailed her thoughts and activities in her diaries. And the New York Times published a front page article about the Lindbergh's plan to move to Berlin. The wife of the army attaché in Germany left behind an unpublished memoir was eye-opening. And Germans, like Albert Speer himself, left behind testimony. More primary sources. And so Lindbergh went home to the United States and became the face of America First. His fame attracted millions of radio listeners and thousands to his rallies. Lindbergh's speeches grew angrier and louder. The United States, he said, should not fight against Germany. Rather, it should fight alongside Germany. White civilization should stick together to fend off what he called the yellow hordes. He blamed FDR and Winston Churchill for trying to push the U.S. into war, and he also blamed American Jews. He called Jews others, not Americans, but a group of people living in the United States with no allegiance to the nation. He called them conspirators and a hostile foreign race. And he put them on notice that America's tolerance of them was tenuous, that if they supported war, that they would be punished. Scary words. Punished? Like in Germany? It was ugly, poisonous talk, and many at his rallies responded with their own ugliness. Such shouts of "Hang Roosevelt" were not uncommon. How do we know all this? From copies of Lindbergh's radio broadcasts, as well as transcripts of those speeches that were published in newspapers. Rallies, too, were covered by the major newspapers. And Mara Lindbergh also left accounts of the rallies in her diary, War Within and War Without, which we have here. Lindbergh himself was free with his opinions about the Jewish people, as well as intervention in the war in Europe, in his wartime journals. And he also wrote several magazine articles defending his beliefs, including ones in the Reader's Digest and another in Atlantic Monthly. All, of course, are primary sources, adding up to a historical record that supports and authenticates each detail. Why a book about Charles Lindbergh? Because his life, it casts an illuminating light on our present American moment. And isn't that the purpose of biographies? By sweeping young readers into his world, they can see their own from another perspective. After all, how else can we learn about living in the present, if not by telling true stories from our past?